Hi everyone, it's Benza here. In 2024, I made 12 games, a game for every month. My goal with this was to learn the Unreal Engine, and I feel I have succeeded, at least to a point where I had the confidence to start making a larger game. Again. You might or might not know, but I was working on a larger project already back in 2023 using the Unity engine, but when the Unity runtime fee was introduced, I decided to give Unity a pause and learn Unreal. Since then, Unity changed CEO, the runtime fee is gone, Unity 6 is out, but after spending a year learning Unreal Engine, I decided to stick with it, at least for now. So, when 2025 started and the Hungarian One Game a Month Game Jam series, or HEY for short, for 2024 was finally over, I decided to return to my original game idea and start migrating all my systems from Unity to Unreal one by one. Luckily, the character movement was halfway done. Unreal comes with a pretty usable third-person controller template, but of course I needed to add the climbing mechanic. I really love how climbing works in the old Gothic games, and I wanted to replicate that, which basically means that you can climb up on almost any surface that is within jumping range. I have found a tutorial on YouTube that more or less does what I want, and while I will definitely need to modify it later, the system is good for now. For the interaction system, I used an interface. Luckily, I already made interaction systems for a few of my HEY games, so I just needed to take one over and refine it a bit. Another important system was the inventory. In my Unity project, I had a basic inventory system with the ability to pick objects up and drop them, as well as interactable containers from which the player can loot items or store items inside them. Creating this system was not that hard. Because of the Unity project, I knew what I was doing. The interesting part was to find the perfect way to do it. I saw people make inventory systems using the Unreal Engine data tables, and while I think data tables in Unreal are useful, I do not think they are suited for a complex inventory system. I ended up using data assets instead, which I found to be the closest to the scriptable object method that I used inside Unity. The last thing I had in my Unity game was the health system. Making a health system in itself is not that complicated. However, my game needs a stat system in which health is only one stat among many. So I needed a modular system capable of changing and tracking various stats, as well as triggering events when a stat changes, for example, reaches 0. With this system implemented, the maturity of the Unreal Engine project was on par with the Unity project. Sadly, as 2025 had been very busy for me so far, and I had a limited free time to work on my game, and even less time to make videos, getting this far took me months. However, development did not stop here. An inventory system with the ability to pick stuff up and drop it is cool, but of course, it is only the tip of the iceberg. Items in inventory need to be used, equipped, consumed, read, given to an NPC. Luckily, the data asset approach I started with makes adding all this functionality rather easy. Once you have an inventory item with all the basic functionality, you can create child classes from that with extra functionality such as usable items, and you can even create child classes from that such as consumable items or document items. Another thing I wanted to do was crafting. Many of my favorite games are RPGs. I get most of my inspirations from them, and almost all RPGs has some sort of crafting, most commonly alchemy. So that is what I started with. I created special recipe items that can be used at dedicated crafting stations should the player have all the necessary ingredients. I also started to combine the different systems. For example, I made a door that required a certain key to be in the player's inventory for it to open. Or, a consumable item from the inventory should be able to communicate with the stat system to increase health. This can be done in multiple ways, and I must admit I was not that consistent. I sometimes used events, sometimes interfaces. Of course, I try to avoid cross-referencing between the different systems to make each system stand on its own without the others, but there were times when I felt like I had to. For example, consumable items directly look for the stats component on the owner actor of the inventory to easily modify health and whatnot. One thing I like about Unreal over Unity in this regards is that it pushes you towards this separation of systems. In Unity, all components on a game object are equal. This means that you can cross-reference components with each other without the game object knowing about them communicating. It is fine as long as there are only a few components, but player characters usually have a lot of functionality, and without a manager component to hold all these different systems together, it can become messy. In Unreal, actors are set up in a way that they function as manager scripts as well, so even if you want to cross-reference components, you will need to do that inside the actor itself. In October of 2024, I made a game called The Pilgrimage for the 1 game a month challenge, and for that game I created a dialogue system. I could reuse it quite easily, I only made some minor adjustments to the UI. There was one major update I had to make. In RPGs, some conversation options are only available after certain conditions are met. For example, if the player needs to solve a riddle, they should only be able to select the correct option if they gather the knowledge by, for example, reading it from a book. I needed to add this functionality for this system to better suit an RPG. Sadly, my conversation system uses data tables, which become very cumbersome as dialogue tree gets more complex, so sooner or later I will probably need to rework it, but it will suffice for now. Actually, I made a tutorial about this dialogue system, the base version. You can watch it here. And while you are at it, it would mean a lot to me if you press the subscribe button. Thank you! All these systems are not enough for a complete RPG, of course. I would need quests, combat, equipment, not to mention that the systems that I currently have need a lot more improvements. But it is a start, and it was enough to make a small demo game using these systems. Because the Hungarian 1 game a month Game Jam series is alive and well in 2025, and for July there was a jam theme which I could fulfill with the systems I currently have. The theme was Mix 2 Genres and the bonus theme was Dungeon Crawl, so I decided to make a game that is set in a dungeon and it has some light platforming as well as loot collecting and crafting in order to progress. The game showcases every system I made thus far, including the inventory, crafting, interaction, health, climbing and dialogue. It is called Alchemyst Dungeon, and you can download it from itch.io for free. It has roughly 10 minutes of gameplay. If you try it out, please leave a comment with your suggestions and feedback. Feedback is very important when it comes to improving my systems further. I have embarked on a long journey with this game. I do not really know what will come out of it at the end, and I also do not know how long the development will take. All I know is that I have been making game jam games and hobby projects long enough, and now it is time for me to make something bigger with more gameplay, more playtime, and most importantly, a good story. I will try to regularly update all of you on how the game progresses on this channel. If you are interested, make sure to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!